Travel Michigan. I'm Dave Lorenz, along with George Zimmerman. And George, where are we headed to next?
Well, to Detroit to talk about things that I love, which is auto-related, and Autopalooza in particular. We've got Chris Pekorski with us, the advertising manager from the Detroit Metro Convention and Visitor Bureau. And Chris, obviously this is a huge time of year for Detroit, given all these auto events that happen kind of around each other. So let's start with the Dream Cruise.
Woodward Dream Cruise, huge event, draws millions of people to Metro Detroit. As a matter of fact, I will personally be escorting a film crew in from Australia,
All right.
Shannon's Auto Insurance, around an entire week in town specifically to cover the Woodward Dream Cruise.
That's great. Well, and I think obviously there are a lot of people who are familiar with it. But certainly people who have not done it, I mean, you definitely have to do this, especially on Saturday. It kind of goes on all week in some ways, but Saturday is the big official day, next Saturday, and it is just spectacular. If you're into cars at all, I was there, I think, last year, and standing next to some people who drove up from Ohio, didn't have a classic car, just wanted to watch all the cars go by and talk to the owners of these cars when they're parked and all that stuff, and it's just so much fun.
It definitely is. It started in Ferndale 18 years ago by a gentleman, Nelson House, along with a group of volunteers to basically relive their heydays of the 50s and 60s, but also as a way to raise money for a youth soccer field. And it has grown exponentially and involved more communities along Woodward.
Yep, and now it is the biggest single auto event in the world.
Yes, it is. It is the largest single one-day automotive event in the world.
Chris, we call it a one-day auto event, but it's not really that anymore, right?
Correct. The activities actually start off on Thursday in Ferndale. They have cars and art, Ford truck display. There's bands, activity taking place in Ferndale. And then Friday there's activities in Berkeley, Bloomfield Township, Pontiac, Royal Oak. It really is a festival celebrating our rich automotive history throughout the communities that border Woodward Avenue.
Well, I think too, again, for people, and I know many people have been, but for those who haven't, if you haven't experienced it, the coolest thing about it to me is its kind of lack of central organization in some ways, in that people just cruise Woodward along that whole section of the communities you mentioned. So, it's not like a parade. It's just people out enjoying their cars. And for those of us of a certain age, to be sitting at a stoplight with a 65 Corvette on one side and a 2+2 Mustang on the other just brings back some very good memories.
Definitely. Although there are some organized parades, for example, Berkeley on Friday evening has a parade at 6:30, a classic car parade. If you just want to sit on the side of the road, it's a constant nonstop parade.
Correct.
The entire week.
Exactly.
Well, if you don't frequent Detroit a lot, or if you're not from the Detroit area, you might be wondering why we're talking about all these other communities other than the city of Detroit, and when we're talking about Woodward, because I think most people think Woodward, they think of Detroit, but Woodward is a big road. It goes for miles.
Correct. It basically starts off in downtown Detroit and extends all the way up into Flint.
Yeah.
And they're actually having their own event, Back to the Bricks, that week as well, which we promote under our Autopalooza umbrella. If you're an automotive enthusiast, when in Detroit or the Southeast Michigan region, Detroit's the place to be.
Yeah.
Of course, and we mentioned earlier in the show too, this is obviously the weekend of the Pure Michigan 400 at Michigan International Speedway. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff. You've got the Ford factory tours tied to the Henry Ford, so there's all that stuff going on, and Autopalooza.org is the site for all of that auto-related stuff. So be sure to check that out as well. So Chris, what else? I mean, we've talked about a couple of the things. Anything else on the Autopalooza theme, or you just want to talk about other Detroit things going on?
Well, basically, the Woodward Dream Cruise and the Michigan 400 is the culmination of our automotive events throughout the summer that kicked off with the Chevrolet Belle Isle Grand Prix in June. The Grand Prix will be returning again next year, kicking off May 31st through June 2nd. There once again at Belle Isle, so we're excited about Chevrolet's sponsorship of that event and the return of the Indy cars to Belle Isle, once again to kick off Autopalooza for next year. But we're not done yet. Along with our automotive events, we're working closely with Motor City's National Heritage Area to promote a driving tour of historic sites throughout Michigan and Ohio and also Ontario, tied in with the War of 1812. A majority of those sites are here in Michigan, all the way up to Mackinac.
Right, and the other thing that's, you mentioned the War of 1812. We've got Navy Week coming up in September, too, where the U.S. Navy's bringing a number of ships in early September, and that'll also be a great event for Detroit. Correct.
That is September 4th through 10th. And there is a website for that as well, Detroit1812.com.
So, Chris, the driving tour that's commemorating the War of 1812, is that, in the Michigan section, is that all, tied to the War of 1812? Not necessarily auto-themed, but it's a driving tour as is tied into the War of 1812.
Correct. Historic sites, Fort Gratiot, also, up there in Mackinac. Key points that played a deciding role in the U.S. naval victory during that war.
Well, what other auto-themed events do we have coming up this summer? Is the Woodward Dream Cruise kind of the last big one?
Exactly. We end with a bang.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You have about 1 million of your good closest friends celebrating auto heritage, all mostly in one day. That's a pretty big event.
Exactly.
Well, you mentioned the Back to the Bricks event up in Flint. Flint's been doing that for, a few years, and that's a big event in itself. Can you describe what that's all about?
Well, as you know, it was the home of Buick for a number of years. Their event takes place August 14th through the 18th. Flint is also the home to the Sloan Auto Museum. There are a number of activities that take place at the museum. There's a car parade that will be taking place on Thursday prior to the Woodward Dream Cruise that weekend. Again, all this information can be found at Autopalooza.org, and by accessing the individual events, there's a link to Back to the Bricks and also to the Woodward Dream Cruise.
Well, in all of these places along this whole region here are part of what we call the National Motor Cities Heritage Area, which, of course, Detroit is kind of the epicenter of. So you don't even necessarily have to come only during these event times. There's all the other time of the year you can visit some of these really cool places like the Paquette plant and others.
Exactly. We have the Walter P. Chrysler Museum up in Auburn Hills. So those that are Mopar fans, Chrysler, Dodge, Plymouth, there's a place for you to go. There is the GM Heritage collection, although not open to the public. If you have a large enough group, it is available for tours and special events.
Occasionally you can get into the GM plant in Flint, and there's the Henry Ford in Dearborn. There's just so many places that are all part of this auto theme. So, hey, Chris, thank you so much. Chris Pekorski, Advertising Manager, the Detroit Convention Visitors Bureau. For more information, go to Autopalooza.org or go to visitdetroit.com. That's all the time we have for Travel Michigan this week. On behalf of George Zimmerman, I want to thank Mark Blackwell, our engineer, and invite you to join us next week right here on Travel Michigan, where your trip begins at Michigan.org.